Have you ever gotten that gut punch feeling when your stomach just drops out of nowhere? Like gravity itself decided to betray you? That was me, standing barefoot in my own driveway, staring at the empty space where my BMW used to be. At first, I only heard it, the screech of tires disappearing down the street, and then dead silence. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I'd parked somewhere else. Maybe I was losing it. But the dark oil stain right under where the car should have been told me everything I needed to know. My pride and joy, a fully loaded BMW M4, was gone. Now I live in one of those picture-perfect HOA-ruled suburban neighborhoods. You know the type. White picket fences, lawns trimmed with military precision, and that one neighbor who treats the HOA handbook like it's the Ten Commandments. That neighbor was Karen. And yes, that was her actual name. If you've ever met a Karen, you already know the vibe. Clipboard always in hand, sunglasses even on cloudy days, and a permanent scowl sharp enough to curdle milk. Karen had a teenage son, Chase. 18, cocky, the kind of kid who thought a loud muffler made him a race car driver. He'd been eyeing my BMW for months, throwing out comments every chance he got. "Man, you should let me take that thing for a spin." I'd laugh it off every time. "Not a chance, Chase. Insurance doesn't cover teenage chaos." That morning started like any other. I was inside halfway through making my coffee when I heard my garage door rumble open. My first thought was that I must have hit the remote by accident. But when I stepped outside, my heart just stopped. The car was gone. Chase had swiped my spare key, the one hanging right by the door, and taken off in my BMW. Just like that. One second, my car was safe in the garage. The next, a spoiled teenager was out joyriding in it. I called the cops immediately, still in my slippers, trying to explain how my neighbor's kid had just stolen my car. Before the dispatcher could even finish typing the report, I started hearing sirens. Close ones. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. The police. My BMW had been involved in an accident. My heart sank all over again. When I pulled up to the scene, I froze. Flashing lights everywhere. Officers are removing around. And there it was, my BMW sitting sideways against the curb with a massive dent down the side. The glossy black paint was gouged and scraped, the mirror dangling by a wire. Then I saw what it had hit. A police cruiser. The entire door was caved in like someone had kicked it in with a steel boot. And there, face down on the pavement, hands cuffed behind his back, was Chase. The air buzzed with police radios and the low hum of engines. My beautiful M4, my immaculate, carefully kept car, looked like it had been through a demolition derby. The sight made my jaw clench so hard it hurt. 2 officers stood beside the cruiser that Chase had sideswiped. The older one looked calm, like he'd seen this kind of stupidity before. But the younger officer, the one whose patrol car had been hit, was pacing, fists clenched, his face red with fury. One of them turned to me. "Are you the owner?" "Yeah," I said, forcing the words out. "That's my car." He nodded, expression unreadable. "We've got your neighbor's kid here saying you permitted him. Said you told him he could take it for a quick spin around the block." I blinked at him, stunned, then let out a laugh. Not the funny kind, more like the you ever got to be kidding me kind. "Officer?" I didn't even know he was in my garage until I heard him drive off. And just as I said that, here came Karen, marching down the street in her robe and slippers like she was storming a courtroom, shouting before she even got close. "This is all a misunderstanding," she yelled, voice shrill with indignation. Of course it was. At least that's what she thought. My son wouldn't steal a car. "He's a good boy." Karen's voice cracked through the chaos like a siren. Chase was still face down on the asphalt, muttering something about just wanting to see what it could do. When our eyes met, I saw no remorse, just embarrassment. He wasn't sorry. He was caught. Karen marched up to the officers, fury in every step. "You can't just treat him like a criminal," she barked. Then turning on me, she jabbed her finger like a dagger. "This man shouldn't have left his keys out like that." That was it. My patience finally snapped. "Your son broke into my garage," I said, voice shaking with anger. "Stole my car and hit a police cruiser, and somehow that's my fault?" The younger officer stepped in before things exploded further. "Ma'am," he said firmly. Your son's lucky no one got hurt. He's being charged with unauthorized use of a vehicle and destruction of property. Karen's face went pale. Chase kept his eyes on the ground, silent. That's when I realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood knew. You couldn't have written a better gossip headline if you tried. I woke up to texts, doorbell rings, and one of those nosy neighbor concerned notes slipped under my door. If there'd been a front page, it would have read, HOA chair's son arrested after stealing neighbor's BMW. See? I hadn't mentioned it before, but Karen wasn't just part of the HOA. She was the HOA. President. Self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, ruling over property lines and flower beds like they were royal decrees. And now her golden boy had crashed my BMW and a cop car on the same day. I half expected her to apologize. Maybe even offer to make it right. But this was Karen we were talking about. Instead, she doubled down. That afternoon, I found a paper taped to my front door. An official-looking HOA violation notice. The claim? That my car, yes, the one her son had stolen and totaled, had been parked improperly and posed a safety concern. I stood there on my porch laughing in disbelief. I called the HOA office immediately. Of course, the only person who answered was Karen herself. Karen, I said, trying to keep my tone level. You've got to be joking with this notice. Her voice came through the phone, syrupy sweet. I don't joke about safety, dear. If your vehicle hadn't been so tempting, none of this would have happened. I actually laughed out loud. You're blaming me because your kid committed a felony? That's your opinion, she replied, cool and collected. But as HOA president, it's my duty to uphold community standards. Maybe this will teach you to be more responsible with your property. I was speechless. The nerve of this woman was unreal. I told her the insurance company was handling the damages and that her son was facing charges. She cut me off sharply. You'll be hearing from our attorney, she said, and hung up. I stood there staring at my phone like it had just insulted me personally. Not only had her son stolen and wrecked my car, now she was threatening me. That was the last straw. I gathered every piece of evidence I had, the police report, security footage, even the officer's statement confirming the break-in. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing for war. But as I was backing up the footage that night, something caught my eye, something that made my blood run cold. Karen had been there. There she was, clear as day on the recording, standing in my driveway that morning, arms crossed, watching her son slip into my garage. She didn't try to stop him, didn't shout, didn't move. She just watched, and then she nodded. I must have replayed that clip a dozen times, zooming in on her smug expression, that faint, satisfied smirk like she'd been waiting for this to happen. It wasn't negligence. It was deliberate. The next morning, I printed still frames from the footage, stapled them to the police report, and drove straight to the precinct. The same officer from the crash recognized me. Back again? He asked. Oh, yeah, I said, sliding the papers across the counter. You're going to want to see this? He watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he leaned back, exhaled, and muttered, well, that changes everything. Turns out Karen's little HOA crown wasn't going to protect her this time. The police added a new charge, aiding and abetting unauthorized use of a vehicle. Apparently, when you stand by and watch someone commit a crime, especially your own kid, the law doesn't look too kindly on it. That evening, right on cue, Karen came storming up to my front door. She looked nothing like her usual polished self, hair a mess, eyes wild, voice shaking with rage. How dare you drag my name into this? She hissed. I held up the printed photos. You did that all by yourself. For a split second, she faltered. Her voice cracked. He's my son, she whispered. I thought he'd just drive around the block and stop. You thought wrong, I said evenly. He sideswiped a cop car, Karen. He could have been killed, or worse, someone else could have been. For a moment, the arrogance in her eyes faded, replaced by something almost human. But it didn't last. You've made an enemy, she spat. No one crosses me and gets away with it. I shut the door in her face. Weeks later, the court ruled in my favor. Insurance covered every dime. Chase got probation, mandatory driving lessons, and community service. As for Karen, she was quietly removed from her HOA throne. The residents had seen the footage. Turns out, aiding a crime wasn't exactly on brand for their community image. Now the neighborhood's quieter. My locks are stronger, my security system upgraded, and my spare keys, well, let's just say they're nowhere near a hook anymore. But every time I start my BMW, I still check the rearview mirror just in case Karen's on her porch, plotting her next move, because with people like her, it's never really over. And if that twist shocked you even half as much as it did me, hit that subscribe button before Karen files another complaint. Drop a like if you think Chase got what he deserved, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done if this happened to you?